And we're recording. All right, this is AEP 859 Module 3. My name's Clint. I am a social studies teacher at La Crosse. And then this is Derek. I'll let him introduce himself.
I am a high school math and science teacher, also at La Crosse.
And Beth.
And I am Beth Renfrow. I teach second grade also at La Crosse.
All right, so we're going to talk today about concepts of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, trauma-informed care, and social emotional learning. So how does social emotional learning impact curriculum in our school? Well, I know they don't really have anything specific for us to teach as far as social and emotional learning. I don't know if you guys have gotten any guidance on that from anybody.
No, and if we have, it's been very minimal. Not something I can come up with off the top of my head. So yeah, not really.
Yeah, it's not something that I've seen in place in the curriculum within the elementary school either.
Okay. ACEs, I know that I took some training at Fort Hays about ACEs, and I think we got some training here at the school about ACEs too. How do we look at those in our schools, and how do we kind of integrate our knowledge about that into our curriculum? I know that just from my very basic knowledge of that like when you start counting off all of the ACEs that kids have, like it really starts to make sense. Like, oh, so that's why such and such is happening, and so on and so forth. And then I think knowing those things helps you make accommodations in your classroom, like right off the bat before anything else even happens.
Right, and with that, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because we say we want to know those things to try to help the students, but at the same time, we don't necessarily want to know everything and treat that student differently for the wrong reasons. So yeah, we have to find the balance in it somehow, and I know that's an ongoing fight in education. So
yeah,
I agree. Having the ACE training at our in-service before the beginning of this school year, I think really made a difference in just your classroom management plans that we used in my classroom and in other classrooms I know at the elementary school, just to how to look at your behavior with your whole entire class as a whole and still be able to individualize things better. So certainly the more that we're introduced to these things, the more it does make sense and the better you can accommodate students, hopefully without singling them out.
Yeah, definitely. And then as far as integrating it more into our instructional practices, I think one of the things that we can look at, like we had the training for the ACEs at the beginning of this year, I think we really could probably use some social emotional learning training as a professional development tool, because I think with the right information and the right knowledge, I think it could change the environment in our school, because we do have a number of kids that could benefit from us having more training in that, I think. What do you guys think?
yeah, I agree right along with you. We're told these kids have these things and that they need to be differentiated with their instruction just a little bit, but then they don't really tell us what that difference is. So I think, like you said, some professional development training to learn those different techniques and what to do with students that might need that additional help would be extremely beneficial.
Definitely, I agree with that. And then to add on to that, having more assistance there personnel wise, we need more resources for our students. So as one person in a classroom of 20 kids, when you have this social emotional aspect of the student to handle, do you have time for that in your class period Do they have time for that made in their IEP? Is that more of a direction that it needs to be focused on? There certainly needs to be more resources. We need to have someone that these kids can go and talk to. I would love to see having a counselor or a social worker in our building at least sometime, that we know that they're going to be there consistently, and that they students could get to know on a semi-regular basis, so that there's another layer of, I don't know, of resources there for the student.
Oh, definitely.
And
Absolutely.
not just their classroom teacher.
Absolutely. And I think if we did have somebody that we could integrate into our classrooms like that, like a counselor or something, then that would probably be a huge benefit to helping us integrate that stuff into our curriculum, because we would have an on-site person like, hey, Billy, how do I integrate this into my classroom? You know, and then I think also we could look at sending one or two or several teachers to some official training on how to integrate social and emotional learning into curriculum. I know there's programs out there that can take your curriculum map and help you integrate certain things. It's not a big change. Obviously, it's more like a routine thing to help kids feel more comfortable so that they don't have any adverse emotional reactions to the classroom environment. And I think that's a huge thing too, is if you teach in a certain way and the kids are comfortable with you and their environment, I think that would be a huge way to change the culture in the school.
Absolutely.
All right. Personally, what is something that we can do personally to move these ideas forward in our school? One of my ideas on that is you guys know I love to research. And so looking at what's out there and maybe integrating it into my classroom on a small scale, and writing down my interventions and all of that stuff in like a journal. And then at the end of the year, presenting it to Mr. Webster and Mr. Keeley and showing them the things that I did and how it affected the students. That would be one way that I could do it. Other ways is just probably ask for guidance. Like, hey, what do we do? Because like we all said earlier, we haven't really gotten any guidance on how to do that or what to do. So I think that would be one way to facilitate it, is just to ask, like, hey, are we supposed to be doing this? What do you guys think?
Right, and the same thing, just researching resources that we do have, not necessarily immediately in our community here, but where within using the co-op for special education services and other things through Hayes, there have to be resources that are utilized better in bigger districts with more of everything than what we have here in La Crosse. But that doesn't mean that there aren't services that I feel like could be in place here for us and for our students and staff that we just don't know about because we haven't found it yet. So I don't know if it's going to take that really big stumbling block over a student to where you dig and dig and finally find this gym that was sitting there all along and never been used. But there's got to be things out there that for our community, even now that we can use things virtually, maybe we can connect with some bigger districts in other parts of the state that can share some of those resources and maybe wouldn't add a financial burden necessarily to our district.
I know, yeah, like what you're saying with that branching out and networking, the Kansas educators on Facebook,
right,
like that we were all encouraged to join and sharing best practices. That thing, there's a wealth of knowledge just in networking, like on Facebook. I've learned an incredible amount. So I'm sure, like you mentioned, that we could just reach out to some of the bigger schools that have plans in place and ask advice.
Right. And now even with the pandemic and everything going on, we as a school realize like, oh, small schools can still use the technology and branch out to those larger schools and all these different online resources that we probably haven't utilized just because they were online resources and we were, the small school or whatever. But yeah, I agree. There are resources out there that we probably need to utilize much better.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in looking at that Facebook page, I found I didn't even do a search. Somebody asked on that Facebook page if for programs that school districts were using for social emotional learning, and I cannot make this up. This was yesterday. It came up on my Facebook feed, and it said that they use FastBridge. Apparently, it's a program that kind of like a learning management system that they use to note their social emotional learning stuff. Like they just put it in and it maps the entire school. And so teachers know who's doing what and how they're interacting with each other. It's very cool. But I can't make that up. Like that came on my feed yesterday. It's crazy. But yeah, I think that's awesome what we have at our fingertips when we network like that.
Absolutely.
Anything else that we could do to I don't know, improve the curriculum that we have or use? I don't even know. We don't even really have
just
anything.
keep adapting. You can't teach the same way for 40 years. Even this is my third year, and this is totally different than what I was doing 2 years ago. So just keep adapting and keep understanding that not everybody's the same, and we're not perfect, and we don't have the exact formula for success in the classroom. So
yeah, and I think the way that just the times are changing from how education looked 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's going to continue and move forward. I feel like in this, where this is going to be more normal, and it's not going to seem so a separate thing to talk about your social mode. It will just be more all encompassed, I feel like, is the direction we will continue to go. So being open and engaged in that process, I feel like we have a really strong set of curriculum that we use at the elementary school, and they will, as they change that, I'm sure you will start seeing some of that being engaged in what we're provided from that standpoint, and just continue, like you said, to adapt to our students and as times change. And it's not just students in the classroom. We're realizing virtually learning, it's a family dynamic.
Yes.
And we are seeing a huge amount of things that are making a whole lot more sense now, that we can do a lot when we have those students in our classroom, but they still have to go home every day. And we're seeing the effects of learning what that looks like when those kids don't have these resources utilized.
Absolutely.
We're going to see a big change, I feel like, just the focus of education.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's all of the prompts that I had. So unless we have anything else to add, I would like to thank you both for joining me. I truly appreciate it. Absolutely. And we will get this in the mail. Well, in the inbox. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.